Hello, hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. To everybody out there all over the globe, welcome to our regular webinar series every other week or so. Sometimes we squeeze a couple together and sometimes we take a break. But we're really pleased to be with you tonight. We're going to be welcoming very soon our former Minister of Environment, Tamar Zandberg, our special guest tonight on this live webinar. Hello, Tamar. And hello, David, doing our back office from his home in Jerusalem. David Amichai. I'm Jay Shofet from my home in Tel Aviv, where I'm guessing Tamar is as well. And
not the same home, though.
Excuse me?
Not the same home,
Not
though.
the same home. Not the same home. No. Not the same home. Welcome, everybody. Yes, thanks, Karen, for starting off, letting us know where you're from London. Let us know where you're from and where you're calling in from. We already have 60 people and counting here on the webinar as we open up. We are also now live streaming on Facebook, so let your friends know. Hello from Berlin, from Norway, anybody from the United States, our main audience base here. Okay, Jerusalem. Hello, Brian. Ira from Baltimore, one of our board members. Thank you very much, Ira, and all of our board members of our Friends of Associations in the United States, Canada, the UK, France. Greetings, Paul from Albuquerque, where we have we're blessed to have two board members in Albuquerque, New Mexico, of all places. But, you know, people all over the States, from Texas to New York to California, and a lot from many of our Canadian donors are in and around the Toronto area. And yeah, welcome all of you. As I say, Toronto, Shoshana writes us. Look, Tamara's going to be talking tonight. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. Please try to write them in the question and answer feature. We're up over 70 people and counting. I think we'll just wait another minute or two and welcome Tamar. She's going to speak tonight. I'm going to interview her, throw out a few questions. We'll have a conversation, and you guys can write in the question and answer feature anytime you have a question. If I think something's relevant to the discussion, I'll interrupt or I'll work it in. Otherwise, we'll just get to your questions at the end. We'll talk maybe for 40 minutes or so. And 4 minutes after the hour, I think we'll get going. Wow, so many people have already written in from all over, parts here and there. It's always great and inspiring for me to see so many supporters of the Society for the Protection of Nature from all over the world. Hello from Wales. Heavily overrepresented in Europe tonight, Tamar, for you. I'm not sure why, but I know everybody's excited. I've heard from a lot of people already that they're excited to hear what you have to say, as I am. So welcome, Tamar Zandberg, former Minister of the Environment from the Meretz Party, and now no longer in the Knesset. Meretz itself, you had elected not to run. Meretz itself didn't pass the threshold by a few thousand votes and is not in the Knesset. And wow, we have such a different situation. I'll tell our audience members that as I've written about you in this webinar, we've had many environmental ministers in Israel since 1990. I think Ronnie Milo was the first, also a Tel Avivi. But few, if any, have been as appropriate for the job as you, a lifelong social activist and environmentalist in your heart. I know you're concerned about urban sustainability and what's going on in Tel Aviv. And I know in your period, you learned a lot about nature and biodiversity and the important stuff that SPNI is doing through some special connections you had in your office. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the government of change that you were a member of that functioned until the very end of December of this year for almost a year and a half. And, what you see as the environmental challenges that you faced and how you dealt with them. And, then we'll get into how you see the situation today and where those issues, that you left just 2 months ago, really, where they all stand now and what are the threats we're facing now. I'm sure our audience will be very interested to hear that as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for hosting this event and inviting me, and thank you all for supporting the nature and biodiversity in Israel. This is an important place, an important spot on the globe to do so. And I think you're kind of surprised, Jay, from the fact that it has only been 2 months since our government dissolved. We used to call our government the government of change, or the coalition of change, and it was really all about, it brought together forces from left and right and center, with a partnership of an Arab-Israeli party in the coalition, unprecedented in the history of Israel, just to get Israel out of a crisis. And now I think we are witnessing what many of us see as government of revolution, and even a coup, some say. The change looks so remote in the past. And I think that our government had a lot of challenges. It was very diverse, but we kind of managed to come around having the environment and the climate, and us facing our place on the globe, facing climate change as one of the maybe top 5 issues on the agenda of the entire government. It was my personal pursuit and my personal, agenda. But also throughout the term of Prime Minister Bennett and then Prime Minister Lapid, we were able to push that issue up on the Israeli agenda in times that it is needed, maybe more than any time, in the past and in the future. We are in a climate hotspot. We are heating up and drying out faster than the global average. Very, very sensitive ecosystems and biodiversity around 5 different climate areas, close to the sea, going from up north to the Negev in the south, in a very vulnerable and unique ecosystems and biodiversity that are under a lot of pressure from climate change, but also from the population growing. Israel is the #1 growing population country in the OECD. That means a lot of construction for housing, for infrastructure, a lot of pressure, a lot of threats for biodiversity, for the open spaces, and it is a very small country. So being small and dense puts our biodiversity and ecosystems in a much worse threat. And our government, and I personally kind of put that in the top of the agenda to recognize those threats, to protect from them, and also to become proactive on defending those very vulnerable ecosystems. I can start from unprecedented nature, like a reserve, in the marine area outside in the economic area of Israel.
A marine nature reserve, yeah.
Right, yeah. Where the Palmachim disturbances, it's a very unique geological reserve where a very, very unique ecosystem is, and going through climate adaptation. Many people say that Israel might be very small and not affect the global greenhouse gas emissions as bigger, stronger, more industrialized countries than us. We can debate about that, why we should also contribute our share, but there is no question that we are vulnerable. I mean, that we will be hurt from the changing climate, and we have to adapt, and we have to go through all the way to nature-based solutions, to river recovery, to protect our marine areas that are very vulnerable and very unique in Israel around the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret. So a lot to protect and a lot to do, and we actually started doing so. And I think the environment is maybe one field in which you need long-term, policy and long-term strategizing. So the changes of government are not very good as by itself. Add to that this very specific government that already, once the elections outcomes were declared, we started being worried that Israel will become one of those countries, like I see here a lot of people from the US or maybe Brazil or Australia, where the environmental agenda is politicized. So it goes across the watershed of politics between those who, believe in it and think that protecting the environment is important, and those who see that, as a progressive, liberal, left-wing kind of agenda. But
let's not look to the current situation yet, and let's pretend we're talking. Okay. It's November 2022, and we're having this conversation, and Silman hasn't left yet, and we still have a government. You're still in the government, so you've mentioned climate change and our need to get to zero carbon emissions, and the need to adapt to, and to mitigate the effects of climate change through nature-based solutions. Some of the threats we mentioned today, we talked earlier about CATSA, the EAPC, the pipeline corporation. It's called the Europe-Asia Pipeline Corporation, that has plans which you pretty much squashed to turn a lot into a major oil pipeline. So take me back to November 2022. How did you see the biggest things on your agenda, and what were you most proud of at that point?
Yeah, so I think if I put one title above our term, I would say that maybe two things were most significant, or three. One is, as I mentioned, pushing that up on the entire governmental agenda, because we now understand that it's not just a deal for environmentalists, and I consider myself an environmental activist, as probably all of you, but without looking at the entire economic development, if I would say, construction, growth, without the ministries of finance, of energy, of transportation, all of these have to do with that. And maybe the best manifestation for that is the climate law that I put into the coalition agreements, and also pushed for the first reading in the Knesset before the government and the Knesset dissolved, was an entire national governmental architecture of how to protect the environment and mitigate and adapt to climate change as a general, by the climate mainstreaming of the policy. That's one. Second is I can mention looking at the policy instead of, in many of our environmental struggles, we look at that as a struggle. We see a threat and we rise up to protect, the river, the sea, the beach, the shore, the ecosystem, the species, whatever. I wanted to kind of look at this entire issue of environment, and especially the biodiversity and ecosystems, in a more proactive manner. So how do we, for example, declare a new marine reserve instead of waiting for the oil or gas drills to happen or to be planned and protect this area? You mentioned the pipeline. How do we, so we declare the policy of zero extra risk to the Red Sea and Eilat Bay area, because it has the world's most resilient coral reef in the Red Sea, and we shouldn't wait for another drill, or we shouldn't wait for another leak. We just say, no, we have a new policy saying zero additional risk to that area. So don't even ask. Don't even try to move some more oil over that very, very special and vulnerable coral reef, because we will not approve that. And I can go on and on with many issues that we kind of flipped the pyramid from waiting for the threats to happen and then try and fight them, to giving a policy that would look at the environment as maybe the most important and vulnerable asset and public good, that it is our job as the government to protect and to avoid from spending.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of takes me right into the next part of the question. And with our first question here, I haven't seen the last couple, but the first sort of timid question was, will you take questions about the judicial reform? And I mean, how can we not? I mean, everything you just said now made me filled with pride about how we used to be 2.5 months ago, and now scared because the government, you just ended by saying the government has to protect these common public assets. I mean, that is, environmentalist Thomas Friedman has written many times that in countries in general, everybody's got their own interest, all legitimate, all kinds of groups, but only the environmentalists, and maybe not only, but so environmentalists for sure have the true public interest at heart. And they're working for the common good and literally the common ground. And we will only have one Red Sea and one Gulf of Eilat, and it's so tiny. And one tiny little oil spill could, ruin so much, not just the nature, but the tourism and the economy and all kinds of things. And so, of course, the government needs to protect that. But if the government wasn't going to protect that, well, of course, we can always turn to the courts. And of course, we the NGO world have legal standing to do that, and on behalf of the public, according to these courts. But just to throw it out right out there, how do you see these judicial reforms now as they're affecting the environment? It's not all about the judicial reforms for sure, but just in a million scenarios that we can think of and that we know about, it is the courts that have stopped environmental laws from being broken and made environmentalists polluters pay for the harm they do. And so how do you see this all playing out now? And maybe take Katza as an example, if you could play it out, what could possibly happen?
Yeah. So I wanna relate to that in two different ways. One is maybe the most immediate one that I think you mentioned, is that many of the environmental achievements were achieved through the courtrooms of the Supreme Court and others across the chain of judicial system. You need and you have to have a strong legal system, a strong independent court system, to make sure that the justice is being done. Just imagine if you want to go and appeal a lawsuit against a polluting, corporation, or a mayor or a city or municipality that wants to build a new hotel on one of the vulnerable beaches. And of course, these are examples that happen time and again in the last decades. And then you have to go and find out who appointed that judge, in what Likud member is he close to, because appointing the justice was part of the coalition agreements, and you don't have any assurance that your case will be heard objectively and you will get justice, because maybe the polluter has that specific Likud members' ear, or not to mention more corrupt options that happened around the world, and we see them. But I want to make an even deeper point about the connection between all the rights that are at stake, that are at risk, that are about to be hurt, minority rights, women's rights, LGBT, all those communities that are at risk of whose rights will not be as protected as the liberal democracy that Israel dreamed and planned and started its, the Zionist dream was to have Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people and a vibrant liberal democracy, and the right to breathe clean air, to be protected from climate disasters, to have the green, very little spots in the dense and small Israel. This belongs to the family of rights that we are fighting for. And this is much more than one, small, or not small or big, article in a law proposed by that government or the other. This is about what is the soul of the Israeli democracy that we want to see and to continue to live in, in a sustainable democracy for decades. And this is where I see, and this is the point I started to make, right after the elections, I was worried that under the conservative, ultra-Orthodox, populist, extreme right wing, there is no room for minority rights, women equality, and acknowledging the risks of climate change and the importance of the environment for humanity, especially in this very small and hot and dry place and wonderful place on Earth. So I think it's a direct threat, and it's also a more, the bigger picture is also worrying, very worrying. The good news are that, as the Israelis here probably on the call know, the Israeli public is very alert, very determined in the biggest civil struggle since the founding of this country. And just come or watch on Facebook one of the demonstrations or one of the rallies on Saturday night, and you will automatically become more optimistic and more hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, and not just the actual physical protests, but so many sectors of the country.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and the other hopeful thing I'll just say is that Yuval Harari has been writing and speaking a lot in the last couple of weeks. Israel's world-renowned historian, and one of the things he said this week somewhere on a news program was that he believes that we can never go back to November 2022, and this is going to end either with Israel's democracy broken or strengthened. And we don't
have the privilege of a broken. So
we don't have a privilege of a broken.
Strengthen is the only
right, and neither does the environment, which is what we're going to try to stick to the rest of the time. I see there's already some political questions coming in, and I'll just tell the people writing out there, I'm not going to ask Tamar some of the explicit political questions that you have been writing. We'll see about some of them, but I'm not sure if this was in your your portfolio at all, but there was an interesting question about the earthquake in Turkey. I just want to throw it out there to see if we'll talk about it, but Israel, as a citizen, I've lived here for over 30 years, and I don't know how ready we are, but we certainly
we are not ready enough. I can tell you. I was a member of the ministerial cabinet for civil protection. yeah, readiness, not only on earthquakes, on many things. And
Right.
I can tell you that we are not ready enough. We do have like a master plan. So we have, prepared by the army that is, everything that is under the under the title of a national potential disaster is being occupied by the army to make the plan and protect it. But we have many, starting from the strength of the building, of the construction, going through like dangerous substance,
hazardous materials.
Factories. Yeah, exactly. So none of these are, it is worrying, and we are in a dangerous spot.
We're just hoping, one of the things that's so frustrating about this period is that there just feels like there's so many day-to-day critical issues that are being neglected while the judicial reforms are being discussed nonstop in the committees and in the plenum. And there are just a million and one other issues that I'm sure a lot of good MKs have ideas about, including from the opposition, that are just not getting any time or agenda. They're not getting on anybody's agenda.
Yeah, that's true. And this government was, someone had like an analysis made from the interviews that all the ministers and coalition members gave during election campaign. What were they about? They were about the mortgages getting higher. They were about Iran. They were about, the status of the personal security on the streets. Maybe some very, very tiny portion was about the revolution they're performing, and did nothing from what they promised in the last 2 months, only something that was very marginal on the campaign. And one of their arguments is that this is what the public chose them for or elected them to do, whereas election campaign was all about totally different issues. So
yeah, I mean, I think we were all taken by surprise at how quick and how fast and how immediate it all happened. Perhaps even our prime minister was surprised by that.
Agree.
To go back to the environment for a second, I know you are a big advocate and a believer in the fact that, as we believe one of our prime directives is that the environment knows no borders. The environment knows no borders globally, and as a globe, we have to function better. But certainly here in the region, all of the things you discussed about high population growth and hot, dry countries, all of our neighbors are facing the same kind of problems. And we had the Abraham Accords have. The peace treaties we have now with some of the states in the Gulf and a widening circle up until recently of other states in the Middle East really gave a lot of hope for some regional cooperation. Of course, we work with the EU and the Mediterranean basin, but here in the Arab world, it's very new. I mean, you're probably old enough to remember before when there were regular post-Oslo, and for a decade after that or more, 2 decades even, there were regular talks with Palestinian environmentalists and Jordanians. That hasn't really happened so much for a while in most spheres. But then the Abraham Accords happened. How do you see that whole thing going? Cooperation with Palestinians, Jordanians, and then the wider circle?
Yeah, I think this is a very important point. And I think one of the issues on again, our government, on the entire agenda, even though it was very diverse politically. So obviously the peace process with the Palestinians was one of the issues that we did not and could not touch, unfortunately, from our point of view, but maybe, I don't know, others, this was one issue that was very controversial. Nevertheless, everybody agreed that the civil and economic development of the ties between Israelis and Palestinians are a point to strengthen. That went from Benny Gantz as Minister of Defense that signed permits for labor, for workers to come from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank as a means for economic stability of Palestine and of the region. And also on the environment, we had big projects with both the Palestinian Authority and Jordan. Of course, maybe the most known one is what is called the Green Blue Deal. That is to exchange desalinated water from Israel, from the Mediterranean, with solar electricity that a Emirati corporate will build and develop in Jordan and sell the electricity to Israel, because we lack the land to have such a land, solar fields. But also under our ministry, an MOU to recover the Jordan River, the southern Jordan River, that is a huge, cultural, economical, touristical, agricultural ecosystem that has an amazing potential, and we signed that. I actually met with the Palestinian Minister of Environment, and that was the first meeting of these two ministers in 8 or 9 years. So yeah, well, this is my personal agenda, but also the entire government was to look at the hotspot of the Middle East that it is. In Israel, we often look west. I mean, we sing in the Eurovision and we play the basketball in the EuroLeague, and we look at ourselves as part of Europe. We are very open market to the European Union, to the US, etc. But the desert and the sea and the heat we share with the Middle East, with the region. And Israel, under in my term in the ministry, was very active in an initiative called the Cypriot Initiative. That is an initiative led by the president of Cyprus, shared with the countries of the East Mediterranean and the Middle East, to adapt, to share knowledge and capacities in adaptation, because it was under the idea that we share the conditions of the weather, we share the disasters, the fires, the rise in sea level, etc. And actually in Sharm el-Sheikh, I participated in a leaders summit of this initiative led by the president of Cyprus and the president of Egypt. And I sat in one room with the prime minister of Iraq, with the prime minister of Jordan, of Palestine, of Lebanon, and they all shared their climate challenges. The prime minister of Iraq shared his fear from shortage of water. And this is a country owning two of the biggest, the biblical rivers of the region, and they're actually drying out. So it made me, think of all the conflicts that human beings, have been occupying themselves with throughout the hundreds and thousands of years. And maybe climate change is the mutual enemy that we all need to unite and save the future of humanity.
That, I mean, from your mouth to the whatever spirit guides us. So, in your in the previous government of change, you admitted that there were a lot of different opinions about lots of things. And one of them that I think was on the agenda of the government of change as well, which drives me nuts, both as an environmentalist and as a social activist and as an urban dweller, is the whole concept of needing to set up new settlements and new communities all over the place for, in the Zionist mindset of, to strengthen the borders and fill in the periphery and stuff. And I believe that it was already in the period of the last government that there was a decision to double the population of the Golan Heights, if I recall, certainly to double the population of Katzrin, and I think build some more settlements. The previous Interior Minister, Ayelet Shaked, was one of the people proposing this. And I think the current government has doubled down on that. They want to triple the population in the Golan Heights. One of the last truly incredibly wild open spaces, a true neches, a true asset for all of Israelis. People come from all over Israel, not to mention abroad, because the Golan has truly unique biodiversity and landscapes and a sense of wildness that's not found in the rest of Israel. And again, we're going to need the courts to stop this, or at least curtail it as much as possible. And we don't have the courts, and they're going ahead with, you know, new settlements on the Golan, and not just in the Golan. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that did not drill yet in the general, let's say, Israeli mindset. I'm very embarrassed to say that in our government they passed a resolution to have 5 new settlements. It's not settlements because it's not in the West Bank, it's inside Israel, but I was the only one opposing, voting against it. Unfortunately, they kind of re-voted it in this government, and everybody, including the Minister of Environment, supported. I think that is one thing that you are right. We are still, as a society, kind of occupied with the Zionist ethos of, you know, occupying the land. That is a way of truly conquering the state of Israel. Whereas I think that after 100 years of Zionism, you know, the first 100 years were about building it and conquering it, and the next 100 years should be about sustaining it. And how do we make sure that we are sustainable here for forever? And that will not happen if we don't learn how to kind of, you know, be humble with nature and with the open spaces that we still have. Otherwise, you know, we know what nature does to and what is happening around the world, and especially here. I mean, life here would be much worse if we don't make peace with the land. I mean, literally the land, not just politically or religiously, but literally the land and the sea and the grass and the flora and the biblical animals that many of them were already extinct. I mean, if we want to make sure that we survive here and have quality of living here, this is the opposite direction of what we need to go. And this is maybe one environmental idea that we were not able to, like, you know, to absorb yet as a society. And that's a shame, because this is truly, I mean, the land is one thing that if once you like use it, it's too late. It's irreversible. Like many things you can fix, but not the use of land.
Right. Unless you're rewilding, you know.
Yeah, but it's so much more. I mean, you wouldn't destroy a village once you build it. I mean,
no, it's true. And so, you know, the flip side of not using these beautiful open spaces in a country whose population is growing so quickly, as you pointed out, of course, is to build our cities densely and sustainably.
And smartly and with good quality of living, which
right.
is not driving a car, which is, you know, taking a very efficient and excellent public transportation, enjoying walking in the and enjoying our free open spaces. You know, I live here in Tel Aviv, 5 minutes walk from the beach. You know, nature has so much to offer, and we have to know how to live in peace with it.
Well, so how do you think we're doing in that sphere? Let's put aside the judicial reforms at the moment. If we're just up to, if it was November 2022, the planning system of Israel, you know, the mayors, the local governments, 260 or something, I think, local governments in Israel, overall, and there was a question you can, in your answer as well, relate to, what do you think is the future of car transport in Israel? A fully electric fleet? Are we going to have autonomous cars? Do you have any insight on that? But how are we doing in building our cities? What do you think I should tell people when I meet them abroad?
Okay, so I think Israel has, well, as I said, we started with an ethos that is not sustainable and that has to change. Our story, our narrative, that what we aspire has to change. I actually think that we have some good potential in some spots, and the cities is one of them. I think many cities are much more advanced than the government in thinking about those issues, going from the largest ones like Tel Aviv, where you and I sit right now, but also Jerusalem, that is very widespread and has a very poor population and diverse and need the urban nature that Jerusalem has in it. Emek HaTzvaim, that the valley of
Gazelle Valley Park, yeah.
That החברה להגנת הטבע is very active in. So I think we have a lot of potential. I think the planning system is changing slowly. It needs to change much quicker. And we also have setbacks like planning new settlements. Like right now, there is another fight for adding another 2 representatives of the Ministry of National Settlement, if I can, I don't know, led by Orit Struk. That right. the coalition agreements said that they agreed to add 2 government representatives to the planning committees, which is, the opposite direction that we need. So we have flipping, different, the rope is being torn to different sides. I think we have potential. We need to progress much quicker because we don't have time to waste, and because every year that passes and that another new open space is occupied by another building, another neighborhood, another even solar, even renewable energy is a conflict with open spaces. So every year like that is irreversible. But I am optimistic. I mean, it's not lost. We just need to move much quicker.
Thanks. We do, and we're neither of us are thinking, "Well, how can I?" Really not any. Every little battle. The planning committee is one way that democracy is being chipped away, the whole planning system. But there's so many little ways like that. A couple of more questions we have here from people. Environmental education in Israel. And, I know you're somewhat familiar with it, as am I. And, question is, are children in Israel, including religious, non-religious, others? And, I know that we work with the Arab populations, the North and the South, and Bedouins and Druze and Muslims. What do you think is the situation of environmental education in Israel?
Okay, so this is an opportunity for me to tell you about another initiative, another project that we were able to pursue in my term in the ministry. I think maybe one of the few that I'm most proud of, and that is an educational environmental system together with the Minister of Education. So starting from this year, we are already halfway to the school year, but starting from September 22, every school student going from kindergarten to graduation learns and knows and has in his mandatory curriculum material and content relating to both climate change and also nature. So going from the very early ages in kindergarten, they learn to relate to the near environment. They go out, learn about the changing climate and the changing nature around them. And first of all, so they will relate to it and love it. We need to educate our children to love what's around them, so they will be motivated to protect it. And going through as you proceed with age and with the grades, you learn more and more about what humanity does to nature, what are the sources of climate change. Not only in terms of physics and chemistry, but also in art, also in literature, also in citizenship, and economics. So this is a very, very big plan that we plan together with the Ministry of Education. My only hope that it will not be, reversed and canceled like many of the, there is some kind of cancel culture over everything that the previous government did. We see that in many ministries. I hope this one will not be a victim of another cancellation, because this is such an important program. And we also had a program with the informal education. So the Scouts and all the youth movements that already started, they all wrote their vision and started with their summer camps and how to make them more sustainable. And they learned about it throughout the year. We actually had a really revolution in the educational system, and I hope it sustains, because truly this is one of the most important things that we did to, to influence, like we say, the next generations, we like to say in the environmental movement.
Yeah. So in other words, it was starting in this past September from kindergarten or from first grade on, every kid every year was going to have some certain hours per week or per month devoted to environmental studies.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't get changed, that means that the kids who are in first grade this year will have 12 years of environmental study mandated. And
right.
Is that curriculum that it's being written as we speak, or it's already starting now in the kindergarten? Is it kindergarten or first grade that they started?
It started from kindergarten throughout first grade and throughout 12th till graduation. It was already there in each and every grade. It still needs to be, more adjusted but it started like all together. So
right.
every student this year is at least supposed to, and we developed it throughout last year.
Right.
We had the platform ready because the Ministry of Environmental Protection has been actually educating the teachers for 10 years past.
More than 10 years, I think.
Yeah. But it never got to the students, it was kind of a gap, and the teachers got educated, but they didn't have the place in their curriculum to pass it on in the classrooms. So we kind of reformed that. And so we had the platform more or less ready, and it's being developed, as we speak, but it's already started, it's there. It's supposed to be on every school, on every grade, on every classroom.
Wow, that's amazing. In every sector, in
all,
in three.
In the public, in the sectors that are supervised by the government, and that means the general, the Arab, and the Zionist Orthodox.
Right, but not the ultra Orthodox per se. And just so for our audience sake, the truth is that to some degree, environmental education has been mainstream for a long time. The Ministry of Education and Environment have been cooperating for maybe 20 years now on fairly widespread environmental education, but just for a few selected grades, but in many of the sectors, but not in all the schools. And there's also that it's a type of environmental education up until now. I see from, tangentially in my work that the stronger schools and the stronger cities and municipalities are giving their kids more environmental education than the poorer ones. And not because the poor ones don't want, but it's just extra money that isn't always available in the budget. You're saying this program, if it's not canceled, will solve that problem.
Right, exactly.
Right. Any other examples of things that you already are being canceled, or that or you're confident they're going to be continued from your last government? That was another question that was asked.
So of course, the one thing that was already canceled and is very, very bad is the single-use plastic tax. That was probably the first thing, I think, the first day of this government.
First law of the government, yeah.
Yeah, that is really, really a shame, and that they kind of hang that in the ultra-Orthodox. They kind of campaigned saying that this tax was designed to hurt the ultra-Orthodox communities, which of course it wasn't, even though I must say that we did have data, and we knew it before we started, that the ultra-Orthodox communities heavily use single-use plastic more than the general population. However, this is a tax that is designed for you not to pay it. I mean,
right.
it did work. It did work for the first month. The consumption of single-use plastic dropped with 50%, and it stayed like that. It didn't rise back for the next almost a year before it was canceled. You know, people used to say that it's small and not important. Why are you dealing with the spoons and the straws? You know, but all of us, we know how big and how global the plastic problem is. I mean, in 2050. If we don't do anything, we will have more plastic in the oceans than fish. That is a huge problem. And so this is something that they canceled. I know that many things are under threat. You mentioned CATSA, the CATSA policy. I must tell you, I'm very upset and very worried that it's not going to continue.
Right, CATSA is the EAPC. It used to be what did it used to be? Oh, the Eilat. It used to be the Eilat Ashkelon.
Eilat Ashkelon. Now it's Asia, Europe.
Europe-Asia pipeline. But it was originally a deal that we had between a private company in Israel and the government of Iran back when Israel, before the Shah, while the Shah was still in power in the 50s and 60s. And that's why it's under secrecy. And the environmentalists won a small victory, which was, we celebrated, you know, briefly for a moment, maybe, because now they're extending the secrecy only for 1 more year instead of 5 more years. They have a year to let us know that it's, you know, things can be okay there. But we don't know what's going on. But the whole transparency is another whole issue with reform. You know, let's just get back to that for 1 second, Tamar. Somebody has asked, and you know, you're an experienced politician and you're watching the situation here. Do you think President Herzog has the ability, the power, and all of the talks that have been going on can actually, you know, achieve some sort of compromise? Do you have any optimism in that particular channel of things?
So I have to be honest and say that I have mixed feelings towards the entire idea of compromise, because as I think I kind of said that, but the let's say the liberal, the democratic camp right now in Israel, that is much bigger than the center left. I mean, it has right wingers, it has former Likud, Orthodox Zionists. It's really wide. Is kind of feeling that it's not just a law or who will appoint the justice, as important as that is, or the override clause. You know, this is an attack on the entire vision of Israel, like the Zionist movement designed it. You know, if you read Herzl's writing, you see a liberal democracy similar to the Western European, American, you know, democracies that Israel was dreamed to be, and made it happen. Even though we had many difficulties, you know, security ones, we experienced wars and injustice and everything. And we kind of went through all the challenges with this basic platform of what is Israel all about. And many people think that this entire dream is under attack. And it goes from the women's rights, and you know, the only woman director general of a ministry said that she's leaving today. Wow. The only one. Our government had 10 women.
And fewer ministries.
And of course, fewer ministries, fewer Knesset members. the four Likud Knesset members are the only Knesset members. Sorry, they have another two in the Smotrich party, but of course the ultra-religious have none, and etc. So everything is kind of changing in front of our eyes to become less liberal, less democratic, less equal, less rights-based, democracy. So I'm sharing my thoughts with you. I'm asking myself whether a compromise on one article of one law can actually grasp all this change and the threats that it brings with it. These laws did not even pass yet, and already the Minister Ben-Gvir is threatening not to obey to the decisions of the יועצת המשפטית, Jay?
The Attorney General.
Yeah, the Attorney General, thank you. Not to mention the court, the Supreme Court, that for sure these decisions will get there. So, I mean, many feel like we call it a new contract. We need to architect from kind of, not from scratch, but kind of to bring back order that was distorted. So I'm not sure that if we can agree on the way to appoint justice, which I'm totally not sure, because this is a 0-1 question. I mean, it's not something to compromise on. Will you have a politically controlled appointees or not? So it doesn't. I mean, you can have a committee of 8 people and think how you combine it, but whether out of the 8, 5 would be sitting politicians with the automatic majority, that's a yes or no question. So I'm not sure that the compromise is achievable at all on that question. But even if it is, I'm not sure it will grasp the entire, questions that are on stake here. And that's kind of, I don't have an answer. So sorry, now I have the privilege of not being a sitting politician, so I can be more honest with you and share even the things that I'm not sure of,
Well, may you not have that privilege for much longer.
Yeah,
I hope, because but I mean, I hear you. It's not about any particular clause. Yuval Harari, again, sort of the secular, person that I look up to, as many people look up to others. He has, said that it's really simple, and people were getting confused about which, item of which part of which law we're talking about, when it's basically, if they choose the judges, if the politicians choose the judges, and then they have the overriding clause and can always overturn easily a judge's decision, then there's truly no democracy. I mean,
exactly.
And so it's really, those 2 questions are all we really need to look at. And everything else is window dressing. And they put in so much window dressing that it's, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, as they say.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly.
But we can't despair. We're continuing on. And the environment, things are too urgent. And we, regardless of the political situation, that's how I get up every morning. I think we have to keep the environment clean, and the air and the water and the ground, so that, our kids and your kids and grandkids can grow up in a clean, at least have clean air and clean water and open spaces and very livable cities. And so it's got to work for it. Tommy, thank you so much. It was really, really appreciate your time, your effort this evening. Our hundreds of participants from around the globe, as you can see, from all over the States and Canada and the UK and Europe, enjoyed listening to you tonight. This will be recorded. It'll be up online tomorrow. We'll send out the link to everybody. Thanks very, very much. Appreciate your tenure in office, and may it come back soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your work that you're doing. I must share with you that חברה להגנת הטבע was really kind in let's say, in appreciating our cooperation and what we did together. And it's really an organization that is close to my heart. And thank you for all the work you're doing for us, for our small and precious and wonderful country and piece of land. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening if you're in Israel, or whatever, morning, noon, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks to everybody around the globe for being here. Tommy, probably see you Saturday night on Kaplan.
Right.
Distance.
Thank you.
Good night. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks, David, Amichai, back home in Jerusalem, and to all our supporters around the globe. Laila Tov, Erev Tov. Bye-bye.